play it in Cornell.
That's a Geek Yogurt field trip.
I want to go check that out.
Because they probably have a medical.
We can go see the Corning Museum of Glass over there.
Yes!
They have a mask of Medusa. Fucking awesome looking.
Oh,
that's cool.
That sounds
made out of glass.
Wait,
yeah.
glass.
I just want them to make a hole.
I'm pretty sure her mouth is open.
I want them to make a hole in the glass.
The glass hole?
I want the glass hole.
You want the glass hole?
I'm in search of the glass hole.
Okay, I think
this is going to get really scary soon.
We've got to the end. So
smooth.
You can find the Geek Yogurt Podcast on Facebook by searching the Geek Yogurt Podcast. What do you know? Find us on Twitter at Yogurt Podcast.
Ooh,
and subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher.
Yeah, whatever you listen to.
Our main place is Podbean. It's geekyogurtpc.podbean.com. You can find us through the hashtag Podcast Mafia or the hashtag Podern Family on Twitter.
Family, put us.
Yep.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for letting us do a guest episode for your own podcast too. And I hope all you listeners out there enjoyed the spooky local stories.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun. We might have to do this again.
Yeah.
Halloween's a few months.
Yeah, definitely.
What the fuck is that?
There's some musical outage for our show.
Ready to say goodbye, Roger.
Hello, and welcome to Scaryside. The staircase. The house I grew up in had a very disturbing detail about it, which was undisclosed prior to us moving in. It was a gorgeous house in Illinois, with pillars at the entrance, a gazebo balcony, and my favorite, a big beautiful staircase. My Aunt Coletta lived with us, and she ran a beauty shop out of one of the spare rooms downstairs. I would sit at the top of the staircase quite often. It was my favorite place in the house. Not only was it beautiful, but also because I could see a lot of activity in and out of the front door from Aunt Coletta's customers. One time specifically really stuck with me for the rest of my life. It was 1949 when I was about 4 years old. Just like any other day, I sat at the top of that staircase. But little did I know, this wasn't just like any other ordinary day. No, this day was terrifying. As I sat there, watching the customers walk in and out, some smiling, others waving, there was a break in the foot traffic. It fell silent. Too silent. I suddenly felt a cold chill on the back of my neck, and before I knew it, I was tumbling down the staircase. Something had pushed me. I sat at the bottom of the stairs in shock, not understanding what just happened. Tears of fear building up in my eyes. Thankfully, I wasn't badly hurt. A few bruises from banging my knee on the way down, but nothing serious. My mother, just in the next room, hearing all the ruckus, came up to me and told me, "Keep it down and quit playing on that staircase." I said, "But Mom, I wasn't playing. I was just sitting at the top and I was pushed." Something pushed me. My mother had brushed it off, as I was just a child after all. She must have thought it was just my imagination. Later that night, as we were eating supper, she told my father what I had said, as if it was cute or something. Well, it wasn't cute to me. I was still confused and horrified. But that's not the worst part. No, it gets worse. As my mother finished telling my father what I had said happened, my Aunt Coletta spoke up instantly, blurting out, "I was pushed out of my bed last night," as if she felt relief that she wasn't the only one who had that kind of experience, and she could state it freely. But she quickly looked at me and covered her mouth as if she wished she hadn't said it in front of me. Back in those days, people didn't speak of such things. My mother's face grew pale and blank. My father, full of skepticism, didn't believe it one bit. He wasn't one to tolerate any nonsense, and he stated right then that he would sleep in my Aunt Coletta's bed to prove that there wasn't anything pushing anyone in this house. But that night would only prove to be the absolute end of my father's skepticism. On our way to bed, as we walked upstairs, my father stopped at the top, trying to instill doubt and easing my mind about what happened. Out loud, he asked for something to push him down the stairs like his daughter had been earlier that day. We all four stood there, still and clammed up in suspense. Nothing happened. He smiled at me and said, "See, there's nothing to be afraid of. It was just your imagination." With a knuckle rub on my head and a kiss on my cheek, he put me to bed. My Aunt Coletta snuggled up next to me to help comfort me. But I knew it wasn't my imagination, and I could see it in my aunt's face. It wasn't hers either. Nonetheless, I drifted off to sleep. What felt like moments later, my aunt and I woke up to a loud thud, and my father's muffled voice, full of panic from my aunt's bedroom down the hall. It sounded like he said, "Who are you? Leave us alone." The house fell silent once again. I was horrified, but still too sleepy to react to what was taking place. My aunt, protecting my innocence, distracted me and eased me back to sleep. The next day, my father told me nothing had happened and reassured me that it was just my imagination. He seemed a little different, distraught. Even though I found it all hard to believe, I casted doubt on myself and took his word for it. As the days passed, my acceptance of his word grew as there were no more occurrences after that night. We moved out of that house shortly after, and I thought nothing more of it. Years later, when I was in my mid-20s, my mother and I were reminiscing about the past. I made a joke about how I had imagined being pushed down the stairs at our old house. Her face turned pale and blank, just as it did that night long ago at supper. I asked her what was wrong. She remained silent. Her eyes glazed over, staring at the wall, as if she were miles away. I waved my hand in front of her face and said, "I didn't imagine anything that night, did I? I heard Dad. I heard a noise like he fell on the floor. I heard him talking. I knew it." My mother slowly nodded and proceeded to tell me something that struck me with fear. She said, "Your father was pushed out of bed that night, just like your Aunt Coletta the night before. She said she spoke to someone shortly after that horrifying night who knew the history of our house. She stated, "Before we moved in, that house belonged to a banker. He was a sketchy fellow, and he stole a lot of money from the bank that he worked at. He was found out, but on the night they arrived to arrest him, they found him hanging by a noose from the loft railing. He had committed suicide in lieu of being caught. The police never found the money he stole, and it was rumored that his spirit roamed the house, trying to scare off anyone who got too close to his fortune. To this day, I still get chills thinking about that night, and I can't help but to wonder where the stolen money was hidden, and if he's still haunting that house, or if my father's demands to leave us alone that night sent him away for good. If anyone has ever experienced something like this before, we would love to hear about it. Please comment or email us at scarysidetales@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the story.
Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives and become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Radio Detectives. Today's episode is brought to you by the support of our listeners. Thanks so much for your support. And I'd like to thank Tracy and James, Deborah, and Thomas. Thank you so much for your support. We're going to bring you a new series, and it's another one of those very obscure programs. John Dunning's Encyclopedia of Old-Time Radio is chock full of information on hundreds of old-time radio programs. It's 850 pages long and does not have a single word on this particular show, The Cases of Mr. Ace. In fact, the only thing I was able to find on Cases of Mr. Ace was doing a search on Google Books, and they have old issues of Billboard magazine. And there were several advertising Cases of Mr. Ace. It was a syndicated show, and they were offering it to radio stations, just like The Adventures of Frank Race, which I just noticed after recording yesterday. We have Race and then Ace. But it's produced by Paragon Radio Productions, a somewhat obscure company. And that is the only reference. The other claim to fame was how Cases of Mr. Ace was actually turned into one of television's first private detective series. And it was changed under the name Cases of Eddie Drake. However, it's the same basic concept. The star of the program is George Raft, who was a great leading man, particularly from the 1930s. And he became really well known for gangster films. And he kind of ran into decline in the early 40s. So at this point, his star is fading a bit. This series was produced in 1947. Things kind of went downhill when he turned down the role in a film called The Maltese Falcon. Partially because he didn't know that hadn't been directed by the director, and partially because there had already been a version made of The Maltese Falcon. But still, the producers of Cases of Mr. Ace thought that he still might be a big draw, as were other actors of the era. Alan Ladd, of course, in Box 13, which was one of the first programs we saw, had a similar arrangement. This one is less well remembered, but still worth a listen. We have 2 episodes of this series, so let's go ahead and take a listen to this one. I should say that dates on these series are very hard, so I'm not going to put a date on this one. This appears to be either a pilot or the first episode of the series, cannot tell which. But this episode, produced in 1947, is Key to a Booby Trap.
The Cases of Mr. Ace, starring George Raft.
Yes?
My name's Eddie Ace.
Oh, yes, you're the private detective.
Yes. There was a message at my office from a Dr. Gale. Asked me to come right over here. Is he in?
I am Dr. Gale. Come in. Please.
So you're Dr. Gale.
Shouldn't I be?
I didn't expect you to be a woman. What can I do for you?
I want to retain you to talk to me.
To talk to you?
You'll be amply repaid for your time.
Oh, you don't have to bribe me. All you have to do is tell me what I'm to talk to you about.
Your experiences?
Why?
You see, I'm a psychoanalyst, Mr. Ace. I'm planning a book dealing with criminal psychology. And I intend to do something different. And there I need your help. I want the material fresh and unbiased, so to speak. From the point of view of a private detective. Of more specifically, an Eddie Ace.
You make me feel very important. Is that a trick of a psychoanalyst?
No. That's a trick of a woman. What do you say, Mr. Ace?
All you want me to do is to come here whenever I'm finished a case and tell you about it.
Mm-hmm. The strange people you meet, what they said, how they reacted, what they were after.
I guess you know what you're after, Dr. Gale. All right. When do we begin?
I'm listening, Mr. Ace. I'm listening.
The Cases of Mr. Ace, starring George Raft, and produced and directed by Jason James.
You're sure my typewriter won't disturb you, Mr. Ace?
I don't think the typewriter would bother me, but I'm not so sure about the typist.
When you arrived, you said you didn't expect me to be a woman. You were right. I'm a psychoanalyst. Shall we begin, Mr. Ace?
I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, it all started with a killing that was no business of mine. The murder of Frederick Miller, you know, the corporation lawyer. His body had been found in his apartment, 3 bullets in it. As I say, it was no business of mine until I arrived at my office over on 6th Avenue in the morning after the killing. A man was waiting to see me. He was very small, very dark, very smooth. He smiled and showed me all his teeth. He had a lot of them. I opened my door. and he followed me in.
Ah, merci, monsieur.
Sit down. You're French.
You are very observant, monsieur.
What can I do for you?
Permit me. My name, monsieur, is Foray, Pierre Foray. I have selected you to perform for me a very important service. Oui, a service.
Such as...
Oui. Now we come to it. Last night, monsieur, I performed a most impulsive act. I killed a man.
I see. You're a big boy now. You must learn to control yourself.
You are right. But that is how I am. I killed him, and I do not feel regret. I feel only pleasure when I look into my eyes and see him die again and again.
That's better than a double feature.
I had warned this man, monsieur. Twice I had warned him to stay away from Sally, my wife. He would not. So I killed him. It is simple.
You make it sound reasonable. Who is the lucky lover?
A pig named Miller. It is in all the papers. Oh, such a fuss. All for one pig named Miller.
Frederick Miller, eh?
Oui. Cochon.
What are your plans?
That is why I have come to you, monsieur. I am now on my way to the City Hall of Justice.
Giving yourself up?
Oui, but it is not serious. When I explain to the man in charge of the justice why I killed this Miller, he will let me go.
Yeah, sure. He's cute that way. Why did you come to see me?
To hold for me 2 things, monsieur. One, $500, and 2, this little key.
This key, eh?
Oui. You will hold it for me until after the man in charge of the justice has heard my case. When I return, he will give it to me.
Suppose you don't return.
Oh, it is certain. How do I know? Because I am a Frenchman. But I say, if by some silly mistake I am detained, then you will give it to my lawyer. But only if I am detained by what you call a conviction of guilty.
Why not give it to your lawyer now, yourself?
He still remains to be selected, and I do not wish to surrender myself to the justice dispenser with the key on my person.
I see. And this 500, what do I do with it?
That? You keep it, monsieur, for your trouble.
Foray left, and I sat fingering the 500 and the key. It was a small brass key, the kind you use on your trunk. No marks on it except the number, 427. I had Foray doped as a nut. Anyway, Foray confessed to the killing of Miller. And the final editions told how Timothy Hogan, the wild Irish criminal lawyer, came forward with an offer to defend the prisoner. The next morning, Hogan came to my office. I had a hunch he would.
And as sure as I'm sitting here in your office, Mr. Ace, I'm certain that Pierre Foray did not kill Miller.
He confessed.
Confessed? Ha! So there you have a darling confession. A Frenchman, a crime of passion, and he gives himself up. No, not Foray. Not after talking to the man.
And what's your best guess?
Think, man, think. Can't you see it?
Maybe I'm looking in the wrong direction.
And that you are. Foray is covering up for someone he loves.
His wife?
Aha, that's the thought, Mr. Ace. That's precisely the thought. And that's why the case attracted me. There's no money in it, but it's sentimental and violent, and I'm Irish.
Could be, but if he's covering up for his wife, how are you going to get him to sing?
I must. If I can get him to recant a confession from his wife, I could get her an acquittal with a twist of the wrist. Good heavens, man, look at the elements. Self-sacrificing husband, outraged and betrayed wife. She comes forth at the last minute. Why, it's better than Mother McCree. I'll have the jury swimming in their own tears.
I like your script. How are you going to get it on the stage?
Aha, that is the problem. And there I need your help. I know this much. Yesterday, before he gave himself up, Foray came to you. What did he tell you?
Nothing.
He gave you something?
Nothing.
Oh, I don't think you're telling me the gospel truth, Mr. Ace.
I'm not.
I see. Very well. I tried to persuade Foray to give you his permission to talk to me.
That's better.
But in the meantime, Mr. Ace, In the meantime, you might try to sound out the wife for me. Very, very discreetly, understand? But sound her out.
You hiring me?
Yes. Will you see what you can do?
I'm practically there now.
Yes?
Mrs. Foray?
Go away. All day you reporters have been
I'm a
driving...
detective.
What do you want?
Sit down.
Say what you want and get out.
Do as I say or I'll take you downtown.
You don't frighten me a bit. I'm ready.
I see what you mean. Okay. I'll level with you, Mrs. Foray. I'm not from the police. I'm a private detective. I'm working for your husband's lawyer on the Miller killing. You knew Miller.
Yes. Yes, I knew him. What is there to work on? That rat Pierre killed him. I hope he dies in the chair for it.
Pierre says you were seeing Miller. That might save him from the chair.
Let him prove that. Just let him prove I ever saw Fred Miller outside of his office on business.
When did you see Miller last?
None of your business. Get out.
Sure. But keep this in mind, Mrs. Foray. Your husband confessed to the murder. But maybe you'll be able to give the jury the impression that he's covering up for someone else. Someone maybe like his ever-loving wife.
I said, go on, get out.
Oh, by the way, did you ever see this key before?
No. Now get out of here. And tell that rat Pierre I'll do my best to get a ringside seat for his execution.
I went back to my office, opened my door, and then I saw him. A man was sitting behind my desk. He got to his feet. He didn't introduce himself, but I could tell by the bulge in his right pocket that he had a very good reference.
You are Mr. Ace.
What do you want?
The key, Mr. Ace.
What key?
Please, Mr. Ace, do not act childish. Give me the key.
I'm bigger than you are.
But if you force me to use this gun, I shall be liver than you are. The key, please.
He pointed a stubby little revolver at my head. I gave him the key. He thanked me politely enough and left. I counted 10, then raced down the hall to the fire exit, slammed down the iron stairs, and picked up behind him as he was leaving the building. He went straight to the Times Square station. I went right behind him. He went directly to the lockers. I was right behind him. He inserted a key in the locker number 427, threw the latch, pulled the little door open, and then... It must have been hours later when I opened my eyes. I was still in the station. Near me and around me were maybe a dozen more. Cops and interns milled around. But bending over me was Detective Lieutenant Walsh.
Feeling better, Ace?
Yeah, Oh, my head. What happened?
Bomb exploded in a locker.
Anybody killed?
Yeah, the man who opened the booby trap. Blown to bits, and 3 bystanders. You were lucky.
You can say that again.
All right, I will. You were lucky, and I mean lucky that you didn't open it yourself.
I? How could I open it?
With the little key you showed Sally Foray.
Oh, you certainly get around.
Where'd you get that key?
From Pierre Foray.
Oh, Pierre Foray, eh?
That's the name. He came to my office. Gave it me to hold. You can ask him.
Well, suppose you ask him, Ace. But you'd better get yourself a good spiritualist. Pierre Foray hanged himself in his cell 2 hours ago.
Walsh took me down to police headquarters. He talked to me for 2 hours. He didn't learn a thing, but I did. Pierre was visiting his cell by Hogan and Mrs. Foray just before he strung himself up. It was Hogan who found his body when he went back to talk to him again. I asked Walsh what he knew about Hogan, and he didn't know much. I left police headquarters and went around the corner to Jenny, the bail bond. Jenny had been around New York longer than the city charter and runs the biggest bail bond mill in town. I asked her what she knew about Timothy Hogan. She didn't know much offhand. promised me a rundown by morning. I said I'd call her and left it at that. Outside, the rain was just beginning to wash the town. A hack pulled up. I opened the door, bent to get in when the butt of the gun came down across my skull. And that was that. It was the cold water that brought me out of it. I opened my eyes.